are you feeling?
We are reconvening in open session. So may I have Miss Deborah Keys White lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. H, announcement of action taken in closed session. E1, action, Government Code Section 54956.9E3, potential litigation, one tort or government claim. There was no discussion and no action. E2, Government Code Section 54957, public employee discipline, dismissal, release. Information was received. I'm going to move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Excuse me, there are revisions to the classified and certificate recommendations.
Okay. All right. I think that is okay with me. Do we have any questions or concerns? Okay.
The agenda as amended.
Vice President Pizzotti moves. Second. Trustee Alcala seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is adopted. There are no communications and celebrations today because everybody is at River City for the mascot parade. So hopefully the Ducks will do well today. Or the Busy Bees.
The bees.
Or the Dragons.
Bees.
We're going to move on to K, Student and Association Reports. Ms. Madison Lampe, Student Board Member from Washington Middle.
Walk and bike to school day was a huge success at Bridgeway Island. The River City Marching Band marched alongside Bridgeway Island Bees for this very special event. The Bridgeway Island PTO Fall Carnival was held on Friday, October 4th. Students, families, and community members came together for an evening of family, food, and fun. The dunk take was a huge success thanks to our very own Sarah Kirby Gonzalez and Kobe Pizzotti, who took their turns getting drenched in the tank. Bridgeway Island will be holding data conferences in November and December. The conferences will be facilitated by Mr. John Boehm and Dr. Bafico. The purpose of the conferences are to review data, set goals, and identify effective strategies to support the academic and social-emotional growth of all students. Bridgeway Island's Girls Empowerment Group kicked off on October 9th. The girls meet each week during lunch to engage in activities that will uplift their hearts, souls, and minds. Westsac Flood Protect is the citywide agency committed to keeping families safe from flooding through levee improvements and flood risk reduction. Bridgeway Island was honored to have the agency present their important work and provide our students with important information about how to keep themselves and their families safe during a flood. Elkhorn had over 130 students and family members attend the Fiera Day education, where students and families learned about the pathways to college. All who attended had a great time, and many staff members also attended this trip. Riverbank. 5th through 8th grade students at Riverbank had the opportunity to meet with both principals during a youth forum where students could share their concerns with the school and things they think are great at Riverbank. Students continue to work hard and earn Otter Bucks by being helpful, responsible, and having a positive attitude and showing empathy in their classrooms and throughout the campus. Many students save their Otter Bucks to have lunch with the principal. Riverbank staff and students have been working hard to take a stand against bullying and supporting National Bullying Prevention Month. Students are focusing on the inclusion of others, getting to know new people, and using their voice to help others and more. Stonegate. Stonegate's leadership class presented various scenes on anti-bullying to the 3rd through 5th graders. Westfield. Westfield held an anti-bullying assembly for the whole school, and Class Interact presented to the middle school students on what it means to be an upstander versus a bystander. The girls' volleyball team also participated in the Riverbank's 2nd annual volleyball tournament. STEM Club programmed OZ bots using different colors, and the TK class went to the pumpkin patch. Westmore Oaks. For the 4th year, Mrs. Garcia's science students have worked with We Share Solar and built a solar suitcase. This year, the portable solar electric system known as We Share Solar Suitcase will be deployed in an energy-poor region of Kenya, Africa. Typically, a school, children's home, or school in a refugee camp, regions with no electricity or very unreliable electricity. Through this program, this year funded by Wells Fargo, her students learn about renewable energy and see themselves as changemakers by building and sharing these systems. Westmore Oaks is very proud of their students for completing this life-changing device, and stay tuned for pictures when it is deployed in Kenya. River City High School. Here are some pictures from River City's High School Fall Homecoming Spirit Week, including Costume Day, Cartoon Character Day, Orange is Not the New Black Day, and Spooky Socks and Raider Gear Day. Washington Middle College High School. Last Friday, WMCHS spent the day together in the Bright Cafe focused on learning ways to prevent, recognize, and handle bullying. We watched the film Bully and participated in group activities connected to the goal of supporting each other throughout high school and beyond. Congratulations to sophomore Charlotte Jackson, who will be playing 2 roles in the Sacramento City College production of Alice in Wonderland, The British Panto. See her on the main stage at SCC weekends in November and December. WMCHS is opening up enrollment for next year on Monday. Our first recruitment event was today at the California Montessori Project's High School Fair in Carmichael. 7th and 8th grade CMP students collected information from 10 different high schools in the area who hosted tables. So if you're interested in enrolling next year, give us a call. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. May I invite Mr. Buse up for the WSTA report?
Good evening. Not much to share this evening, but I wanted to address the fact that as I go about the district, visiting teachers at different campuses and attempting to solve problems and working together, I am deeply impressed by the high level of commitment of the teachers in the Washington Unified School District. Their hearts are in the right place. We are making every effort to faithfully educate the students of West Sacramento, and I have complete confidence in them. And as we come up to issues that need to be resolved and keeping things from becoming grievances or solving problems at the district level, we are confident in our abilities to do so with the help of our district employees with whom we work. And we have been working rather closely together through employee relations meetings. I think that continues to be an excellent opportunity, and we're grateful to the cabinet members that are a part of that with us. I am happy and pleased to be president of the association and to associate with such wonderful people. We were able to attend, some of us anyway, the leadership training in San Francisco approximately a week ago. Lots of great ideas, lots of great opportunities for us to get together and understand our responsibilities to one another. And I share these things with you and look forward to continued productive working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buse. Is anybody here for the CSEA reports? Seeing none, we are moving on to public comments, and at this time, we do not have any public comments, so I will not read the 4 paragraphs that I normally read and everybody reads. M, public hearing. There's no public hearing at this meeting, and we're going to move on to N, information and discussion items. First up is Washington Unified School District local indicators for 2019. Dr. Parsons?
Good evening, President Wong, Vice President Pizzotti, Board of Education, Cabinet, and Community. Tonight, I am presenting to the board our local indicator report, which will be uploaded to CDE tomorrow. It is our duty to CDE to first present to the Board of Education so that the community and the board can see the indicators, and then before we submit to the CDE. So everyone is aware there are 8 indicators. 3 of the indicators come from state testing and from CalPAT, suspensions, et cetera. And then we have 5 local indicators, which is the basic conditions of learning, state standards, and parental involvement, school climate, and course access. So I'm going to take the board through the report that was attached to the board agenda. Where we get these from, the data comes from our school accountability report card, from our facility inspection tool, and from the Healthy Kids survey. So basics of learning is the percentage of misassignment of teachers and misassignments and vacant teachers. We had 0. Number and percentage of students without access to their own copies of standardized instructional materials was also 0. And number of identified instances where facilities do not meet the good repair. There was 1 school that received a fair rating. However, we immediately put into MOT the work orders, and it was completed, and so it passed to go up to good.
Which school was that?
Stonegate. And it primarily had to do with, for example, electrical outlet was broken, and we fixed that, and things of that nature. They weren't significant, but they were items that we needed to fix. Indicator 2, in ELA,
There you go.
full implementation and sustainability. And what this means is there are basically 3 levels. You're either not doing it at all, or else you have full implementation, or else you have full implementation and sustainability. And I listed that out in the report just for the sake of discussion. I just wanted to put what the range was that we met. In math, full implementation and sustainability, ELD, we were full implementation and sustainability. Next generation science standards was initial implementation. As the board is aware, we are adopting this year. We'll be bringing to the board and to curriculum council next week 6 through 8 and 9 through 12 NGSS aligned materials, and then next year we will be working on K through 5 for NGSS. Social science is full implementation as well. Parent and family engagement, building relationships between schools, staff, and families. We were anywhere from initial implementation to full implementation sustainability. And what that means, as you looked at the report, there were some areas that we needed to improve on because this is a self-assessment. And so talking to the principals and going around to the sites, there are some different issues around how you greet people at the door and things like that, and how you actually do by student by need. Building partnerships for student outcomes was full implementation to full implementation and sustainability, and seeking input for decision making was full implementation to full implementation and sustainability. We do very well with reaching out to our families at our schools. School climate, which is indicator 6. This is derived primarily from the Healthy Kids survey. However, I would like to preface that there are 3 different surveys for the Healthy Kids survey. There's the one that the students take. There's also one that the parents take online, and there's also one that the staff takes online. Our district has not been engaged in that. I was talking to Dr. Phillips, and we are going to do all 3 this year so that we can get a more rounded view of how parents and staff and our students feel. So this is just students, 7th and 10th grade. I'm sorry, 7th, 9th, and 11th grade. The 7th grade responses, 50% was over 50%, except for African American students, who reported 34%. Feeling connected, ninth grade students were over 50%, except for American Indian at 42, African American at 42, and Pacific Islander at 44. 11th grade students reported that 44% of Hispanic Latino feel connected to school, 48% of Asian, and 36% of African American students feel connected. Perception of school safety, all student groups are above 50%, except for African American in 7th grade, which was 35%, and our Hispanic Latino population was 49% in 11th grade. And like I said, I think it's really important to get staff perception as well as parent perception. Because we know that the questions on the Healthy Kids survey, for those students who actually completed it, it could be a little bit skewed. And that's why we really need that, the trifecta kind of a thing. The strategies to improve school climate, talking to the principals. All principals will disaggregate data to identify students who are not currently taking advantage of school clubs, after-school activities, as well as increased promotion of culturally relevant activities. We need to get our students of color more involved with student activities and feeling more connected to school. As you know, we're also starting to implement UC Davis's Transformative Justice Partnership that will train administrators and staff with culturally relevant pedagogy and transformative justice principles. And thirdly, we are going into a partnership with YCOE and Placer County Office of Education to implement a systemic positive behavior system of interventions for all of our schools, which I will be bringing at the next board meeting, the MOU for that. Broad course of study, which is indicator number 7. All students have the opportunity to be enrolled in a broad course of study, including standards-aligned core curriculum, visual and performing arts, career technical education, physical education, and supportive intervention programs. And number 2, there are no barriers to students receiving that broad course of study, but we do intend on evaluating our current K through 8 schedules as well as the master schedules to increase opportunities for our kids. So those are the 5 local indicators that we will be taking forward. Are there any questions from the board tonight?
Do we have a couple of questions?
Yeah, I'll go last. Go ahead.
Vice President Pizzotti, we're actually just, Clerk Jackson and I are unpacking some data that I think
Okay,
we need to formulate a
okay.
question around.
So-
But Vice President Pizzotti?
So, maybe I'm missing something. It said, so these are all questions based on a self-evaluation, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I guess what I'm pondering then is, one thing was good repair, the term good repair. Fair or good repair. There's many schools that I know of that are, I wouldn't say in complete disrepair, but I know of at least one that is crumbling. So how do you come to good repair? How do you determine that?
The facility inspection tool is done by us, but it is checked by Yolo County Office of Education. So they're the ones who did the actual site visits in the spring. So they go around with their rubric and they look at the schools and determine whether it's fair or good. And so it does have to, like I said, this.
They go into all classrooms?
No,
Okay.
no.
Only the ones that.
They just choose. And it's the same thing with the Williams.
So it's random?
Yes, and the same things with Williams, right? We go to specific schools and look at specific classrooms.
Okay, so that helps me understand that a little bit better. And then, I guess,
So, I mean, I can follow up if you're thinking.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of not understanding the difference between good and fair. I mean, it's their tool, but can you explain to us what would be considered good and what's fair and what's poor?
I will attempt to do that.
Okay, and if you can't, I mean, we're happy to get a memo afterwards, or maybe perhaps a facilities expert can explain.
And
Who may
I will
be
be
here.
glad to give you additional information unless Mr. Montbenitez would like to.
So the process for facilities inspection, it is done in a less partial manner because it is done as a spot check random by county office officials. And so they go to every site, every facility which still hosts students, and they do a random check of common areas of a certain number of classrooms as well as office areas. And the things they look for are not what you might consider, so I'm guessing, I know the facility trustee Pizzotti that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so they aren't looking for how visually appealing, they aren't looking at structural. They go through and they make sure that all of the light fixtures are working, light bulbs are new, electrical sockets are working, surfaces are clean.
Air conditioning's on.
That type of thing. And so, for example, the one facility, which is actually one of our newest ones in best repair, that got marked fair was because they found in one of the classrooms they inspected, there was a stained ceiling tile from water intrusion. And they found an electrical socket that somebody had kicked and broken the socket. And so what they do then is that after they do the inspection, they come back randomly within the next 2 weeks to see that any items that they notice have been repaired. And then they can change the rating, either downgrade it or upgrade it at that point. They came back about 8 days later and all of the work had already been completed.
Okay.
And so they upgraded the one facility that was marked fair to good.
Okay.
And you can understand there's a little bit of dissonance because we're going through a master facilities plan and we're walking beyond, physical. There are other areas. So it
Yeah.
sounds like the structural issues. So this isn't structural at all. So as long as the light sockets are working, the roof could fall in and that'd be okay?
That's kind of where
And
I was
that's how,
going.
I'm trying to understand that.
Yeah.
That's why, I think that's why
Yeah,
we're wanting
that's-
clarity, because we're literally going through a big master plan, and we know what our campuses need structurally. So and this is an indicator that we chose as our additional indicator?
Again, you lost it.
Okay. Right, but the local board chooses the local indicator, right?
YCOE.
But we drive the local indicators.
There are a series of questions that on the indicator and the report that I loaded is exactly from CDE that we have to fill out.
Okay.
Okay.
Trustee Alcala?
I have one question. You mentioned the children of color are not participating in the after-school programs.
Oh, sorry.
So
We'll come back to you.
is that could you give me the grade levels, and could you maybe explain some of the reasons why not?
That is one reason why they could not feel connected to school, and that's what we're going to do now is principals are going to disaggregate that data to see how many students are not actually participating in school, and things that participate in after-school clubs, things like that.
So we do have the,
I'm looking at the data.
Right, data.
It's telling me that they don't feel connected to school.
okay.
And so that's why we're brainstorming with principals, how to get more kids.
There we go.
So do you know
Thank
what
you.
percentage of our students of color are not participating? Is it a very large percentage, or?
It is a large percentage of kids that do not feel connected to school. One of those reasons could be that they're not participating in all the opportunities that we provide right now. And so that's what we're going to disaggregate the data to actually
think-
figure it out.
Do you think it'd be, Andy, also maybe parents aren't aware of that, maybe with,
Absolutely. There could be multiple reasons for that. That's why the first step is going to be to disaggregate the data to find out why some of our kids do not feel connected or feel safe. There's a great number of kids that don't feel safe at school as well.
and how long have you been collecting this data?
This data is only from the last year's Healthy Kids Survey.
Okay, all right. And you'll have that for us at our November meeting, you said?
No, at the November meeting, I'm bringing the PBIS MOU and our implementation timeline.
Okay, so we can expect this other information.
As soon as the principals have disaggregated all their data,
Okay.
and we're working with them on
All
that.
right, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you also, what is this, could you give me just one example of this positive behavior intervention that you're looking at?
Sure. In a PBIS system, there are 3 different tiers, and Tier 1 is school-wide and in all classrooms, where they start having pride in their school. And I don't want to use classroom management because that's not what PBIS is, but it has to do with supporting kids, being engaged in the classroom, having a positive environment. Tier 2 is when you start doing additional interventions, and Tier 3 is usually when a student needs more extensive support, and it's usually outside of the classroom.
So the positive behavior intervention would probably start with them feeling really great about coming into a nice, safe classroom.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I finish up?
Vice President Pizzotti would like to finish up his question.
Sorry. Okay, so I was looking on that school climate. I'm just going to touch on what Trustee Alcala was getting to. What seems to be really pretty synonymous over all the grades, or not synonymous, but in line, is the African-American students basically are about 35 to 36% on pretty much all of these categories, and one's in group safety and how connected they feel. Do you know why that number is so standard, going all the way down the line on all of these questions for the African-American groups?
And I found that really interesting, and that's why, again, no, I don't. That's why it could be several reasons why they don't feel connected to school or feel safe. That's why this year we are going to get staff input and we're going to get parent input. Because when you're dealing only with one survey, it could be a little bit skewed.
Well, it just seems like that number it's pretty much uniform all the way down, so.
It was.
It doesn't change for, whereas there is change for the other groups, but not that one.
Clerk Jackson has a comment.
Well, I think one thing that's probably one glaring indicator for me in particular, that it's a probably good indicator of why a lot of our African-American students aren't feeling connected, is because they don't, it's hard to feel connected in a place where you don't see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking that, right.
Right? Because if we look at the populations of our staffs,
Right.
the staffs at our schools do not reflect our student populations.
That's correct.
That's
Yeah.
correct. So school connected is one thing. They also don't feel safe,
Right.
Yeah, that's.
which
the other
isn't on
thing.
here. So 35% of our African-American students don't feel safe.
Right.
Right. And again, I think that kind of works in that same line, because
Which wasn't in our slide, I don't think.
yeah, I
They
think
don't
it's-
safe.
Perception of school safety at the bottom.
Yeah.
And if the board would like, I can get copies of how the questions are asked to the students. If you'd like to see the Healthy Kids Survey, the summary of it.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand that you think that these data are skewed, so you're going to add adult questions to balance
No,
out?
not.
I mean,
no,
so
not-
the skew,
not-
I mean, I think that's what you said. You said that this is skewed in a way, so you're going to add.
I think it's
You're going
important.
to ask other questions of teachers and parents,
I think it's important to have 3 data points.
okay?
So that,
No, I know, but I think that the comment was that the data could be skewed, and so we're going to add 2 other surveys from adults to paint a different picture. Is that what I understand?
to get a fuller picture, not a different picture. I think it's important to get staff comments as well as parent comments. So it's more about getting a fuller picture, so we understand how our parents feel and how our staff members feel.
So I'm just going to go to, but this is school climate with students who are there every single day. Do we not care about what the priority is with students?
One other thing is when you survey staff members, you can really start reflecting on what the perception of staff members are. It goes to what Mr. Jackson said, is that if we do not have a great amount of African-American teachers. And so a lot of times, and that's one of the reasons we are going into unconscious bias and transformative justice, is we need to support our staff as well. So it's about getting a fuller picture.
Why wouldn't you do a fuller picture with focus groups of students as Trustee Kirby Gonzalez and I have on campus? Like you can paint fuller pictures around surveys. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't need the other 2 data points. I'm just saying if we are about school climate, which is about the experience of a student on campus, why wouldn't you dig deeper into that?
And actually, the principals do that. They have, I know the high school, because I know the high school the best, they do have focus groups with their kids.
But that's not reflected in this.
No.
Okay. I mean, I'm just, again, if we're here for students, this is the data that they're presenting.
Mm-hmm.
And the response is, well, we don't have a full picture, so let's go ask the adults. It seems to be incongruent with kind of the logic of trying to support a school climate that is healthy for students. Am I missing something?
No, I understand what you're saying. I think that the dig should be done more with the students more so than with the adults.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
digging more and going to the source and asking the source, well, what is it about the school or is it about the school climate that makes you feel unsafe? Or makes you feel unwanted? Because a lot of times just the feeling, not feeling wanted or feeling valued on a campus is enough to cause a student not to feel safe, particularly with an African-American student. Because a lot, I think in this, as much as we would like to think that all of our students are the same, you have to understand there are some cultural differences when it comes to dealing with black students. Okay, and the fact that, not to say that it's different, that it's not the same for other students, but in particular, you have to come from a different lens and a different focus, because a lot of African American students, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if the perception is that you don't care about me or don't value me as a person, then I'm not going to have any sort of connection. I'm not going to be engaged into much of anything that you have to present to me. So it needs to be more taken from the approach of it really educating the entire child. And I think a lot of times that's just something that is kind of glossed over, because again, when you have people who don't operate from that background and operate from that experience, it's hard to get them to understand that this is a different way that you have to approach these children. And not that they're any different, but the way to get to their being is different. Because there has to be a certain level of respect from the child to the adult and from the adult to the child in order to be able to pull the child in.
Trustee Kirby Gonzalez?
Thank you. I think a couple of points. One is that I had just assumed, which is always a mistake, right? That we had been doing this sort of 360 with staff and with parents and with students. We've gone over Healthy Kids Survey data in the past year, and so I had thought that was part of it. And so I am glad that is happening as one piece of a larger puzzle. I think that we need to do a better job of reaching out to hear in this way from our parents. We do our principal cafes. I think there's a lot of really good things that happen, all the town halls that have been going on. But this is a way where online you can get a measure. That's one measure. It's different from the student measure, but I think it's been missing, and I hadn't realized it was missing. And then the teacher data over here is if teachers, the types of questions are also for parents and teachers are, how do you feel about walking into that classroom? How do you feel about walking into that school? Because if an educator doesn't want to walk into that school every day and doesn't feel supported by their colleagues, that's going to affect the students. Yeah. Same thing for our parents. So I do see the value, and I'm really glad this is happening. But I also see your points. And I think that when you dig into these groups and students and you pull out the focus groups and you hear them and you adjust to them, this changes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this looks different. I don't know if that would be on our indicator or if that is the work to do to show this local indicator change. One piece, when I was going through this data, it looked as though, I have two things about Healthy Kids Survey, is that it looked as though in the write-up that wasn't here, that it was every other year, and I just want to make sure that it's every year, that the survey happens for the grade levels identified. I know it's not for every student.
Correct. We've been also only doing 7th, 9th, and 11th grade.
Oh,
Should
we need to
should
do
go
5th.
Should go down to 5th.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And then, yes, so I would like to see that. I know you're submitting this tomorrow, but I think it has to impact all of those to, and of course, more should be done on a site, in terms of digging deep. But for Healthy Kids, you can't do every grade level. So, and then also there is a module, there are multiple modules that you could pick for Healthy Kids Survey. There is one that is the social emotional. And I talked to Superintendent Linda Luna about this as well. You don't want to over-test kids with these things, but I think that that is a module that is very reasonable to add, very important, considering we've done so much work talking about PBIS, MTSS, and I think adding that social-emotional component of the module, it might be too late for this year, but for next year, I think would be important.
There's also a module for paraeducators and how students with disabilities feel as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important. And then I have a question also about, on slide 2, it says social studies full implementation. But in the write-up that was attached to the agenda, we're rated a 3 out of 5. So I'm thinking maybe that is a typo since our elementary kids are not yet, do not yet have updated social studies curriculum.
Let me look at that, because I want to make sure it's not a typo. One of the things about the implementation, because they don't have an adoption yet for social science, and we want to make sure that they have the materials for the framework part. And so,
Sure, I
so
just want to
that's-
make sure that they match, because on this write-up, you know how you can give a rating of 1 to 5? We self-identified as a 3, which was beginning development.
And that was basically because K-5 does not have updated materials, but 6-12 does.
So then maybe on this framework, when it says recently adopted, it might not be fair to say full implementation.
Okay, thank you.
And then my other point about looking at this data, I think when we come back, because I know you're going to come back when we talk about PBIS, is we're not comparing it to anything. So it would be good to look at the year prior. And so when this comes to us, I think that PBIS meeting might be the meeting to do it. I think too, I don't know how long it takes to get our data. This is about when kids are taking it right now. So I don't know if it'll be the latest, but if we can compare it to last year, not that this is good, I'm not defending these numbers, but I'd like to know, is there a dip? Are they staying the same?
Was that not done? I know that we've done the CHKS before.
Yeah.
Yes, I have, and I don't have that data for you tonight.
Okay, so I know it's due tomorrow. I would ask next time this happens that we have it well in advance, so we can ask these questions, so we can really actually evaluate whether or not we're okay with
Right.
actually this going to the CDE. Because one, it's unfair that we've seen this and the progress, so we have taken the CHKS over time, and that was my other question of what is the measurement? And the other question is for School Connected, is did you, to disaggregate it by LGBTQ? Do we ask that question?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So usually it's the last page of the CHKS, and a lot of districts have been taking it off. And so the CDE has been making sure, like, to call districts who are doing it, to keep it on,
I will check that.
please.
Can I ask a clarifying question? It's electronic, isn't it? So how are they doing that?
Some districts still do paper, so.
Oh,
How do we administer it? As
We have been
actually-
doing paper,
You have been doing it paper?
yeah, but,
Oh,
but I will look into that for you.
Yeah, so that's my understanding, is that it's paper, because I used to be one of the people who used to bubble the bubbles for the people who gave it back to us at CDE in paper. Well, but you do, yeah, but either or, so. Yeah, so we do it electronically?
At the high school level.
does. Yeah, okay, so, but in other grades, we do paper. Okay, so, but that is, LGBT is a question on the CHKS, so there was a experience where districts were not asking that question, and I know in our district, it's important to ask that question.
Yeah.
Because generally, they have higher lower kind of safety rates, if that's what we're looking at here on a number of other things. So, any other questions, Vice President?
You got it.
Okay. Nobody else? Any more questions about the indicators? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Parsons.
Moving on to the executive summary regarding the non-voter approved debt summary. We love debt summaries.
Good evening, trustees, colleagues, and community. So I'll apologize to start out with because my cough is still here. So if I'm chomping on gum to stop from coughing, that's the reason why. So and if I have to stop occasionally, so I apologize about that. In my continued effort to give you more in-depth summarized data from some of the topics that we discussed last year and had a lot of questions about, both from the public as well as from the trustees, I sent out an executive summary, which was attached to the board agenda tonight for discussion or any questions. An informational summary of the non-voter approved debt. Non-voter approved debt in the state of California is any debt that the district takes out promising its general fund to secure a loan. And so I gave the trustees and, of course, the public has it attached as well to the agenda, a summary of the non-voter approved debt that answers some of the questions that have been asked over the past 18 months, such as what type of debt do we have, what was it used for, what's the amount, when is it going to be paid off, et cetera. So you have that summary, and I also gave you some of the, a look at some of the tools that we're using to project those debt payments and how much of the general fund is being used to subsidize those payments for a number of years in the finance department.
Oh, there's an exhale over here. Clerk Jackson, do you have a comment? Okay. Any questions about our debt summary? Vice President Pizzati.
It is sigh-worthy, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think this is stuff that we've all seen a lot, especially when we were doing our budget and our cuts from last year. This is, you know, a lot of this is part of why we've had to make so many cuts, is because of this debt. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, that's great.
Oh, sorry, we
Before
have
I
a
get
public
into
comment
that,
on
sorry.
N2.
Sorry.
Would you like me to read the 4 paragraphs?
I just have a couple corrections to Mr. Chris Malvenides' report. It has no reflection on you as the report writer, has no reflection on this board that we're in this kind of financial debt. One of the corrections I'd like to see made in the report is that the high school property was not part of this debt. The high school property was paid for in full before I left the board in 2004. It was paid for with developer fee money. It was not paid for with COP money. So I would like that corrected in this report, please. The debt that was incurred at the current high school was from overcosts, overruns. At that time, they had $100 million in overruns. I mean, it was just outstanding. It was just ridiculous. And they had to find a way to finance all these overruns. I don't know whether it was the project wasn't overseen correctly. I was not on the board. But it's cost this district dearly. Now, the property at Stonegate may have been paid for out of COP money. That I am not sure of. So, unfortunately, school budgets are dictated by the economy in the state of California. It's hard to pay for debt out of the general fund like this. It's going to take a long time to repay this. Hopefully, developer fee monies will come in so that we can hopefully pay off this debt sooner than not sooner. So, one of the suggestions I was going to make that Jackie already brought up is the fact that staff bring things to you in advance with enough information for you to ask questions and have it brought back in a timely manner. And I think part of the COP problem was brought at a last-minute decision-making process that a decision had to be made that night. And it's not always conducive to good public relationships. So this is public funding that we're talking about here, whether it be out of the general fund or COPs or general obligation funds. Anyway, it's something that you need to take very, very strongly to the public. You need to let them know, and this report is a good start. And I really appreciate this report being brought up because the community doesn't understand how schools are financed. And it's our job as board members and as people who are staff members with the school district to get the word out there. This is going to be hard to pay off, so thank you.
Yes. Questions?
Yeah,
Vice
no.
President Pizzotti, I know that we've, and then Trustee Alcala, and then Clerk Jackson, and.
So as
that
I,
way.
as I was going on, yeah, I'm perplexed about this, because this is gonna hang over our head or hang around our neck, like an anvil, dragging us down to the bottom of the ocean. So can we, at some point, when we do a bond, can we refinance any of this into a bond? Or pay for this with bond money in the future?
Yeah.
Is
I
that-
don't know, we said when we, so let's just preface
When
it.
we, okay, sorry.
Like, there's no.
Well, there will be a
I wanna
bond
be-
at some
I
point in
wanna
the
be-
future.
I don't know that, I don't want to even put that out there, that's not this discussion. Let's be clear that that's not the
Okay,
discussion.
this is
And
not
it
that.
requires more than three.
So hypothetically,
Than one person.
is that what you would like
Right.
me to answer?
Eventually sometime in the future,
So,
if
so.
we ever.
So
if we-
hypothetically, it
If.
is possible to pay off non-voter approved debt with voter approved debt. However,
Yeah.
you have to make that an explicit portion of the
the
ballot
bond,
language.
right.
And typically, now, every community is different, but all of the bonds and special assessments that I've worked on throughout the state, typically when you pull paying off existing debt using geo bonds, property tax floated bonds, they do not pull well or successfully. So that is there is a tension there. So you have to make it explicit, but they don't tend to pull well.
Right. Well, I would imagine probably not, but, my guess is if we had to do a bond for other reasons, that it would be for more than just, paying off this debt. It would be for fixing some broken and disrepaired schools. As the last bottom line of things that we need to do is create a revenue stream for paying off this debt. Because this is just going to continue to grow, right? The interest on this loan will.
2037.
No,
Yeah.
we are actually paying interest as we go. It depends upon the instrument that you're looking at. So the QSCBs, the qualified school construction bonds that we use for solar, for example.
Right.
We're paying that into a sinking fund being held by the county, and so when they have the total principal and interest, it'll be paid off at that time, at the maturity date. So we're paying it into a sinking fund held locally at the county. So every instrument's a little bit different, but we are paying interest on all of them as we go as statutorily required. So the maturity dates listed for the 4 different instruments on the front, starting in 2026, you'll see that the QSCAB, or the one that I was just talking about, will be paid off. So that after we begin to hit those maturity dates, you will see the amount coming out of the general fund going down in general, right? However, all of these projections are based on, because we're paying these principally out of Fund 25 and Fund 56, which is a combination of redevelopment fee pass-throughs, which is sort of a complex thing, but that's what it is, as well as developer fees. And so any time that the economy changes so that development changes with it, these numbers could also fluctuate up and down.
I mean, I will be long gone off of this board by the time these are paid off, so I would like to leave the, the next boards ahead in the future with not this, burden. It would be awesome if we could find a way, if there is a way. I don't know if there is. I'm sure you're a very savvy guy at finding ways of reducing this burden on us.
You're heard. I'm going to move on to trustee Alcala. So, you had a
Okay.
question?
One of my questions was the same one as trustee Pizzotti. I do have two more. What is the interest we're paying annually right now?
They vary, excuse me. They vary. So the low ones are the CREB and the QSCAB. Those were both federally and state subsidized construction bonds specifically focused at developing solar power for municipalities and school districts. Those range between 1.4 to about 2.6, 2.8%. The COPs tend to be more like a bank loan. In fact, they are a bank loan. I think they're Bank of New York Mellon. And they range between 4 and 6.5%, depending upon the issuance. The tough one, and you might wonder, the one COP is so large, almost $71 million. The reason that the language that I used to describe what that money was used for is so broad is because it was multiple issuances over multiple years during largely the construction and the expansion of the comprehensive high school and then the additions onto all the elementary schools to make them K-8s. And then they were constantly refinanced and lumped together. And so there's only so much untangling we could do, especially with the lack of specificity in the way that the account coding was done. So we just sort of had to look, what was it all spent on at the time, and lump all those categories together, which is why that one's a little vaguer than the other three.
So Chris, so dollar amount, what are we looking at?
I'm sorry?
Dollar amount, so we have an idea of what the dollar amount is that in interest?
You mean for each of the issuances? I can give
Altogether.
that to you separately
Okay.
as far as the interest over the course of the instrument, yep.
Okay, great. Also, you mentioned our solar. I know I got some solar, and I was told I was going to have a big savings and stuff, and it hasn't happened.
We had this conversation.
Yeah, so anyway, are our sites paying for their own usage?
So it's interesting. So there's a reason. It's that whole, I think you're all starting to become more familiar with the way I think. It's like, why did I give you that one first? And I gave you the solar executive summary, and you saw that those were starting to break even and starting to pay for themselves more. I think it was after 2026, and the reason for it is actually right in front of you, and that's because one of the instruments used to pay for solar, we're paying off in 2026. So solar is a long-term investment that pays for itself after you pay off the loan you used to install it, right? Just like that solar at your house, when it costs you 20 or 30 grand to install it, it saves $150 a month off your electric bill, but that takes a long time
Right.
to accumulate to that $20,000 investment. So it's a longer-term investment. Everybody was doing solar. It was the thing to do in California, and everybody was subsidizing it through loans like these. So in the long term, Trustee Alcala, especially with some of like the electric buses we're doing, it's a good investment for the district. But right now, we're paying off those loans to the tune of more than we're saving.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. That's it, thank you.
But notice that 3 of these instruments, $22 million of the $92 million, is specifically for solar installations. 3 of the 4 are for solar.
So just real quick, Chris, after 2026, we should see something very positive, right?
There will be less debt.
Okay.
That sounds positive to me. Anything less with debt would be positive, yes.
Because we pay our bills.
Because we do pay our bills on time, that's
Good.
correct.
Clerk Jackson.
Well, I'll ask the question that Vice President Pizzotti hinted at. Is there a way for us to be able to pay these off or pay these down faster than what we are currently doing?
Yes. So Trustee Pizzotti asked about one of them, which is possible. It's not very common or very plausible, but it's possible, and that is to ask the community to vote for a GO bond that pays off existing debt. You can imagine the level of popularity that usually generates. And another one would be, just like your mortgage, I see each one of these as like a second mortgage or a mortgage loan, and that's sort of the simple way I think about it. Any one of these, we can pay principal faster and therefore in the long run, pay less interest and have an overall savings. So you'll see one of the recommendations I made is, for example, one of them, we could pay off 4 years earlier and save about $2 million in interest. Do we have the discipline to save enough money annually to pay off that principal early? Most, and I won't limit this to school districts, most organizations, most households, that's a really hard discipline because we want to keep all the things and we want to spend the money on our kids now. So is it possible? Yes. Is it something that we're interested in because it means giving up more of what our kids need now? Most people typically aren't interested in that, at home or in a school district.
Trustee Kirby Gonzalez.
Thank you. I do really appreciate this write-up, and it makes me, it's frustrating, we can't go back in time, but to know that this data wasn't so clear in terms of some of these solar projects, not that they wouldn't have gone through because there still was rebates and whatnot, but at least it would have been a more educated discussion. It would have been nice to have known, here's exactly what we have, where we are, and what we're getting into, and what this means. And so I'm glad that we have all of this laid out here and now, and I think it is helpful for everyone moving forward. Any board that comes in now, you don't have to dive through and figure out what was this used for, how did this happen, and so I'm really glad to have this document. I was just recently talking to somebody in the city just last week about developer fees and was talking to them a little bit about the COP and about what this debt was, and they said, oh, I had no idea, and it's somebody who I thought would have an idea. And so I think it goes to with, it's hard to explain and to tell people, and this document helps us do that. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Thank you for continuously being transparent with the dollars and cents and how much we owe. I hope that we don't, I don't know, I mean, we'll put that out there. Thank you for paying down our principal, and I suspect that we actually want to support our teachers and families and students, that we wouldn't actually cut something out to pay our debt off.
It's my pleasure. I hate to be the bearer of
difficult
tidings, but I
majority of the
want you to have the
board didn't
information.
vote, we weren't on the board from most of these. The majority of this board did not, weren't here when this passed.
do any of that stuff.
And I'm just saying, three of us, none of these, actually, we were on the board when any of these are, I'm just saying. So, but we are grateful to have new facilities. We are grateful to have money to actually fix our schools. So, I mean, I know this is just the cost we pay so that our teachers are, most of our teachers are in conditions in which they can teach and our students can learn, right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to consent agenda items. Any last minute amendments to the consent agenda?
Not here.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second, okay. Trustee Alcala moves, Vice President Pizzotti seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So adopted. Okay. Ms. Sue Macy Clover, is she here? So,
There she is.
P1, approval of contracted services with Wested for co-teaching model training and coaching. Sue, we welcome you to the podium.
I'm not as tall as Chris. Good evening, trustees, cabinet, and guests. So this contract, Wested is a company out of Oakland who has been working with schools for, well, I'm in my 21st year, and I've known of Wested that entire time. Excuse me, and they do a really good job at our co-teaching training. And as this district moves more towards the co-teaching, the inclusion of our students with special needs in the general ed classrooms, we wanted to make sure that our staff received the appropriate training that would help them be successful, and that our administrators would receive the training they would need, excuse me, because this requires really looking at master scheduling, different types of preps so that the co-teachers can actually prep together, And so this training is critical in getting this off the ground successfully. And so based on the history of West Ed, we decided we would like to contract with them because of the product they produce and the support they'll give our staff and teachers.
Any questions, discussion?
I have.
Trustee Kirby Gonzalez.
Thank you. So I thank you so much for the invitation this summer to see some of this in action with co-teaching with our teachers. I'm wondering if, I have two questions. One, was there a training, formal training that went into that, or was that more authentic? And then two, if there wasn't formal training there, are those maybe going to be the first people targeted for this training, or how will you choose who attends this?
So 3 of my program specialists went down for training in San Francisco on how to teach teachers how to co-teach. So Carla Salvo and Kelly Huberry specifically, working with Stacy Tran with our ELD division, worked closely with the teachers, and there was professional learning time after the school day, before ESY started, and after the school day, so that they could receive that training, ask questions, and get support in the classroom.
Great. And I think that time that they had together each day, debriefing, planning, was really, really powerful. And I hope that there's a way that I saw that this is ongoing, which I'm really glad about, because I think you need that time to reconnect and to go through it. So,
Yeah, we spoke again to West Ed this afternoon, because we want to come back with them in January. Because not only do you need to provide the training, because you do have staff turnover, so you want to keep that up to date, but you also need support, ongoing support, as our teachers work through how to co-teach effectively.
do you know if they'll be allowed to use some of that Wednesday early release time to collaborate on this type of
We're
thing?
not sure. Right now, our first trainings are on November 20th and 21st, and one of those is a Wednesday, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Clerk Jackson?
What's the number of teachers that this training is designed to serve? Is it just like a handful of teachers, or is it?
No. So we're starting with the teachers and admin at Westfield and Stonegate, because that's where we started the inclusion process. The high school has been doing it for quite a while, but again, they also need the training. And we also want all of our admin to be trained, so that as we move this co-teaching model out into the other schools, the admin are already trained on how to handle the master schedule. And we can always bring people back and make this an ongoing thing as we expand.
So then so the cost of the training is then the $12,000, and that also, is that including a possible build out for?
This is for the first amount of training. Again, we spoke to them today, and they've given us a new scope of work. And so we will be coming back with another contract around January. What we're going to do is we're going to backwards map and see exactly where we want to go next, how many classrooms we're talking about, if we're looking at any additional FTE to make this a smooth rollout. Thank you.
No more questions?
Can I, just for procedure, make sure that this is, thank you for this and for your work on this, and make sure that it's uploaded to the agenda, because the contract isn't on the agenda right now.
It's not attached. Thank you.
And just for clarification, so then this is covering for all the teachers at Stonegate and.
All the teachers at Stonegate that are currently co-teaching, and the educational specialists, so I believe that's 5 at Stonegate, hopefully more. Then we have the team at Westfield, and then the majority of teachers, special ed teachers at the high school co-teach, so it would be about 12 there. And we're going to add in as we can, so that we can be successful. So that's what we're in the process of looking at now, exactly who, because you've got to have good teams.
Right.
And the marriages need to be good, or it's not effective. So.
The 2 teachers are nodding.
Yeah. We do not want divorces. So we want to make
Sometimes
sure
they're
that
good
those
for you.
people that are going into it are for it, prepared for it, excited about it, and they're co-teachers that get along.
That's great.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think $12,000 annually is probably a really good investment to train our teachers from West Ed in terms of the caliber of people who actually go to West Ed and provide this training. So thank you for bringing it forward, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of what what the possibilities might be for teaching and learning for all of our students. As we roll it
exciting.
out. It's really exciting, and it's only $12,000 annually. So,
Done. Motion to approve.
Second.
do we have a motion to approve?
I'm good.
Oh, do you have a question, Clerk Jackson? Nope. Okay. So who moved, who
Sarah.
seconded? Trustee Kirby Gonzalez moved, seconded by Vice President Pizzotti. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
All right. No, I was not, because anyways. P2, approval of the single plan for student achievement for all schools. Dr. Parsons and Director of Instruction and Professional Learning, Stan Moisage. Or is it just you, Mr. Moisage?
Just me tonight.
Okay. Director Moisage.
All right, thank you. Thank you, board members. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So tonight, as is a yearly process, we are asking you to review and accept our plans for student achievement, or single plan for student achievement. This is something that you review on a yearly basis. These budgets have been reviewed and approved in terms of the amounts, and they are, the programs in them are consistent with what we are trying to do with our LCAP. And once again, we just hope that you will approve them. Thank you.
Any questions or anything you want to highlight in any of the plans?
There's a lot of things to highlight. I think each site has quite a bit there. You have about 400 pages of technical activities and actions. So there's quite a bit to highlight. There's a lot to do with interventions and the different types of programs that are happening at each of our sites, and some of them are unique to each site. And of course, as a year goes on, we will keep working on these. These are I think it's important to notice that these are living, breathing documents. And as the year goes on and we get new data, that we will be looking to improve upon these plans as the year goes on to whatever the needs that best suit our students.
Any questions? Comments?
I have
Trustee Kirby
a,
Gonzalez?
thank you. I have one. I feel like when I've looked these over, read through these in the past, I didn't have an actual number. I'm seeing, for example, on one of this, it says, we will increase our Smarter Balance assessment by 5 points in the LA. We will increase this by 10 points. And I'm wondering why, and I know you weren't in this room, and these all happen at our school sites and with everybody coming together. I'm so grateful for everyone on the school site councils. But I haven't seen that in that way in the past, and I'm wondering if you can hint to that at all, if that has been a discussion at district level in terms of actually putting in there a number?
So typically, just speaking from as a site administrator, I would have had to create a SIPSA like this. Typically, we were, my recollection is we are usually asked to put something that is quantitative to measure. And so it's not too unusual to put a number there. So that to me has pretty much been the common practice so far. Maybe it's just written in a different way.
Okay.
Vice President Pizzotti?
So you've put your goal in of, say, 5 to 10%, because that triggered a question in my mind. What metrics do you use to realize that goal? I mean, how do you tell if you've actually increased by 5 or 10%, or?
So we would be.
Yeah, and that's the other question is, what happens if you don't? Do you create a plan, or?
Yeah, you kind of answered that one there. Yeah, it's basically what happens is if you don't hit your mark, you go back and review and try to find something else that's going to work better. Typically, what happens is in the fall, school teachers will come back to work, and they'll get their data of how their students did in the CASP, and those are usually reviewed at the school level. And at that point, usually that's when staffs kind of get to look and see if there was an improvement or not.
So we're using the CASP as a barometer of this?
I think on the one that Ms. Kirby Gonzalez pointed out, that was the CASP, but there are also other barometers as well. And not all of them are linked to just academic achievement as well, but there's also things in these reports that are linked to discipline, attendance. You get a wide variety of benchmarks. But I think the one that you just asked about, that Ms. Kirby Gonzalez pointed out, was the CASP.
Clerk Jackson? Nope. Any other comments, questions?
I'll just finish up with mine. And so as I look at this again, for example, it says homeless students will increase by 10 points. And this particular school has 20 students who are identified as experiencing homelessness. And so I think that the people, it would be nice if we could, in the future, look at having our school sites come together and maybe having some work done at a district level in terms of what are our goals, big picture, because when I see a point attached to it, I understand that we need to have data. I understand that, but it sometimes is concerning for me if there's a deep dive into what this looks like, who this is, what this means, and if it will be revisited or turned into us. So a food for thought in the future of how we might work with our school site councils, because I know that when people run and they get in, they don't always know, what does that mean? What do I do now that I'm on school site council? So maybe it would be nice for us to have some type of a training to get everybody together, and then for our sites to hear what these maybe look like. Is something that I would like moving forward. And I also, on a separate note, think that maybe bringing them in and just honoring them, because it is work to do this, is also, as we do our celebrations, that might be one to think about, bringing in our families to do that.
So,
Thank you.
I assume you also involve them in the LCAP development, where the district-wide LCAP development.
Involve who?
The school site councils.
Yes.
So that
Yes.
is another way that they actually provide input at the district
Yes.
level. But I think I hear very clearly that some people don't actually understand when they're running in and running out, that maybe we do offer some sort of training of what the purpose of it is. Because every time I ask somebody, what do they do there? Like, I sign a paper. They actually really don't. My understanding is they don't have a real deep kind of knowledge of what they're signing off to.
I agree with you, President Wong.
Not that you handle it that way,
But
I find a lot of parents.
But I agree with you, though, that there is a lot of work to still be done, not just to educate parents about just our school climate in general. And I think this is just one area of it. So I agree with you.
Okay, good, great. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Vice President Pizzotti moves.
I'll second. Or you?
Trustee Kirby Gonzalez seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You have your SIPSAs.
Thank you. And Board President Wong, I know you weren't at the last board meeting, and Mr. Principal Sean O'Neill gave me a shirt to give to you for the West Sac Middle College High School, so I left it up there in front of you.
Washington Middle College.
Washington Middle College. Sorry.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
I'm in big trouble, I know. Okay.
Panthers.
This is the last time I volunteer to help somebody out.
Why do you say it was an extra large? I'm just joking.
Now you're really in trouble.
We'll stop digging now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Ms. Norma Gonzalez, Assistant Superintendent Norma Gonzalez, I should say. Approval of the certificated substitute teachers, retired teachers, and preschool teachers' daily rate increase. So it's only one half of the proposal from last time.
Yes, good evening, Board President Wong, trustees, cabinet, and community. First, I want to thank you for your feedback that you provided when this was presented to you at our last board meeting as information. I did make notes of the questions, and I can briefly respond to those. So the first one you had asked, and I will, if you want me to expand, I gladly do so. But one was to reduce the number of days for certificated substitute teachers so that it would be an incentive. That is in the proposal or the recommendation. And I'll loop back in what that looks like. And then the substitute pay, an issue whether that would be negatively impacting our teachers, that the sub-differential. Looking at the data and the number of teachers that are currently, that hit that mark, it's pretty minimal. Right now, I can't, of course, disclose how many there are. But typically when an employee or teacher goes on a leave, or any employee goes on a leave where that would require differential pay, it's because they've already hit an extended period of time. But that is a topic subject to bargaining, so we can certainly discuss that when we come to the table next year, because that's an article that's not for negotiations this year. A question came up about whether the substitutes can be paid weekly or rather bi-weekly, and we did check with business services in our county, and at this point, that isn't one of the options. They have pay cycles. They do have supplementals, but they are strictly reserved for emergency situations, so we'll have what's the end of the month and then a supplemental pay. So it isn't something that we could just unilaterally do at this point in time. And I think that was the last of the questions. With regard to the certifications for our early childhood educators, they would basically need a teacher's permit. It's not the same type of credential as our certificated teachers require. And by way of the revision, I did provide the same executive summary, made the revisions, which in honor to the request of reducing the number of days that one would hit that higher tier. That is coming forth for your approval for both the certificated and our retirees. And want to mention that we are doing an aggressive recruitment effort. I'm going to be tapping into the retirees that retired last year because there's a period in which they have to wait. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm going to talk to him. That's right. Thanks for that plug. So as soon as they hit that 6-month mark, we'll be sending out little flyers, emails, you name it, and try and get them back in the fold. And then, let's see here. We are going to host an internal recruitment event for our certificated, but we're also going to sweep in classified as well. So if you look at the flyer, it does show that we are not only going to recruit for substitute teachers, but paraeducators, clerical secretary, campus aide, noon duty, food services, bus drivers, custodians, et cetera. And we are already having or sourcing some management so that they can help in that recruitment effort. And you're welcome to come out and be present. We won't put you to work. And then let's see here. I think, and also at this point in time, I will be coming back in January with an update of these recruitment efforts. And at this time, we are going to put on hold the contracted agency, which we believe would be helpful at this point.
The outsourcing?
We will be bringing that possibly back in
just
January.
giving you grief.
I know. That's why. But that is the intent at this time. So the recommendation or the proposal is for the board to approve the increase of the substitute rates for our certificated teachers, our retirees, and our preschool teachers.
I think we have a public comment, but Dawn, you can just come up.
Yeah. You have like WSTA emeritus status.
Hi, Don Stoffer. I just want to mention that, there is a proposal to increase the sub rate, and you can see it's fairly modest in the terms of what things cost these days. Right now, when there is not a sub, which is a lot, that means coverage is often provided by other certificated teachers. And I know many of our teachers are very happy to get that extra work, but that's a lot more expensive than what it costs a sub. And I think so higher rates will pay for themselves if it does increase our substitute pool. Thank you.
Preaching to the choir.
I understand some of our administrators have been in those classrooms as well, so those are extremely expensive
Subs.
subs.
And then, if I may add one more piece. Last, at the board meeting, we had 4 on our consent for our recommendation. Today, we bring 5, which you've approved. So we are diligently scouring our ed join pool. And, just wanted to make that comment.
I know we had a full discussion. Trustee
Yeah,
Alcala.
It was just a question. I know we sort of joked about, perfect attendance and how students get rewarded for that. But I'm almost wondering if, I realize maybe a lot of the absences are maybe because people take vacation dates that they're entitled to and all. So I'm just wondering if that hasn't been something that's been explored,
It is something that we are considering.
Monetary.
However, that is compensation, and that
Subject to
article is
bargaining.
not,
Right, no,
it is
I
subject to
realize that.
bargaining. But there are, like I mentioned, we are looking at trying to develop a wellness plan as well, because like I mentioned, when employees feel well, they, come to work, and we're going to have a walk this Saturday. In case you haven't noticed, there's a walk here in West Sac. So there are efforts that we're trying to do to look at it holistically, so that employees are here. But, there are bona fide absences. There's vacations, and there are, illnesses that we have to account for that, So I do hear that, and that perhaps once we come to the table next year with regard to salary and compensation, we can look at an attendance as incentive. And it's not unusual.
Yeah,
I
so-
have experienced that in the
okay.
previous district.
Kind of adjacent to this, I am wondering, and you don't have to answer now because I doubt that you have it, to understand the absence rates per school site, because that's an indicator of school climate.
Yeah,
Whether or not
it
somebody wants to
certainly would be.
come up,
Absolutely.
whether or not it's vacation or sick.
Right.
So I would be interested in seeing that, because I know that you're actually unpacking, you unpacked that at district-wide last time when I was on the phone, but I'd be curious to know which campuses and where it's happening more often.
Okay. In
And
my
and
report-
grade level, if possible.
I can provide that in my attendance report or
Yeah.
recruitment report in January, if
That'd
that's
be
okay.
great, yeah. If you can.
Great comment.
I often have great comments,
You
Vice President
often
Pizzotti.
do. I wasn't insinuating that you didn't, but I think that was actually.
Any other question? Trustee Kirby Gonzalez?
Thank you. I appreciate you also talking about the differential, and I'm very supportive of this. I'm only one board member, but my proposal is, so I don't know how my colleagues will feel. If we have a teacher who right now, and I know this is a small percentage of people that we're talking about in the district that are on differential leave, but let's say that we have a teacher right now who's on paternity, maternity, or adoption leave.
Right.
Which you are, all of your sick days are taken for that, unlike most other professions. So all of your sick days are taken, and then you're on differential leave. So your paycheck take out the substitute paycheck. So let's say you're on that leave today, on differential leave for another 2 weeks. Your pay today would be higher than it will be after we approve this. And so what I would ask for my colleagues, I'm very supportive of this, is that we move forward, but keep the teacher's current differential pay until the end of the year, since it'll be negotiated next year. So that's what I would ask for this, since they signed their contract and went into
Ms.
this.
Gonzalez has a response. It
I
seems like she's
I
probably
have a
thinking about
respectful
this.
response, because
Sure.
that would also, is the request also for classified?
Right.
Because-
Sure, thank you, that would be very fair.
Because I would hate to.
Did we we raised the classified?
This
Yes,
is,
we
the
did.
topic is
Absolutely,
specific
so
to.
across the board.
When contract negotiations are up. Okay, so Clerk Jackson.
One of the things that I noticed, and I had spoken with Superintendent Luna about this, is that one of the things that we do differently on the other side of the river is that when we have retired teachers that come back and say long-term sub for us in the district, is that they start off at the normal sub rate. There's a little bit higher of a pay, kind of close to what we're talking about here. But then once they reach that 20th day, 21st day, then they get more something along the lines of what their daily rate was when they retired. And I don't know, is the 235 that we're proposing for retired substitutes at 6 days plus, is that commensurate with what their daily rate would have been?
That depends on where they were on the salary schedule when they
Right.
retired. So
Assuming that they're all the way over on the salary schedule.
I want to say it's a little less than that.
Little
but
less than
I'm
that.
so sorry, I don't have the answer, but I can certainly provide. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So it is less. One thing that and I know it's more technical and operational, is that we do not intend to have them go back to that lower tier at the start of every year. Seems like systemically, or historically rather, we've done that. So I think that'll also be a lure for retention purposes.
Yeah, and for me, I think I think the more, if we could have more retired teachers from our district coming back and, And granted, and with the understanding that I do know that there are limits as far as how many days they can work and how much
Yes.
money they can earn before it starts to impact their retirement.
Correct. It's about 46,000.
Right. So even at that higher rate, if they were to, if they, once they worked a certain number of days, if say we needed, I don't know, a long-term science teacher.
That has a beard and recently retired,
We actually do.
and who lives in this community.
Yeah, that we need, that
And
we
lives
needed to
close to
come
the
in
high
and
school.
long-term sub for us someplace. I think it would be a lot more enticing
Yeah.
for said teachers to come back, if they knew that, well, I'm gonna earn my daily rate at what it was when I retired.
The pro and con to that is that they'll work less number of days, because it is a salary cap, so.
Yeah, no.
So, I mean,
point.
Yeah.
we want to maximize them for,
Which is true. I mean, we
I mean,
had.
yeah, we
we
want to
have one of
value
our-
that, but at the same time, I mean, there's the pros and cons, so I thought I'd point that
Yeah,
out.
well, because we've had, every year in my school, we have one retired teacher that shows up every single day, even though he may or may not have a job. But for that, he's retired, but he still works full-time. He has a spending problem. But I think, that for him, that he actually did hit that threshold with about a month and about 6 weeks left into the school year last year, where he couldn't work anymore because he was approaching that
Right.
40-something thousand
Without
dollar.
jeopardizing his retirement.
Yeah, jeopardizing his retirement.
Right.
But just as something as another incentive, and I know we're talking about, I don't know, I read also in the proposal too, that talked about, I know we can't provide financial inducements, but I don't believe taking care, providing our own live scan and things like that, is that considered part of that as well?
We do a lot of that.
And where that would not be a burden on people applying to be substitutes in our district?
What we were, currently, we do not offer district-paid rolling or fingerprints, but what we are planning to do is to establish payroll deduction so that it could be taken out once or twice throughout once they begin working. And I've seen that in other districts as well. So it is something we can consider as far as if it is something that the district would pay.
Yeah, I
It is
think,
a-
because it would be a fairly minimal cost, I would believe, for us to pick
Dollars
up the.
per though, right?
But
For the
what
money man.
would we get? 50, 60 subs?
It's about $80, yeah.
We do it for volunteers right now.
Right.
But we have not been doing it for substitutes or permanent employees.
Correct.
I think, as an incentive to kind of bring things more in line, to put us a little bit of more competitive advantage, I think would be if I was Brandon, say, for example, I'm just graduated from UC Davis, I don't have two nickels to rub together, but I'm looking to get into a sub pool someplace, not having to come out of my pocket to pay that $80 would be a pretty
Yeah.
enticing thing for me to do, just to be able to get my just to get started.
Yeah.
As a possible inducement to coming on this, staying in Yolo County versus going over to Sacramento County.
Is this part
I'm
of the
just making a
proposal?
sug-
Because we
I'm
are
just
having
making
a
a
job fair,
suggestion.
so I mean, I'd be happy to announce that as
If we
well.
already do that for the volunteers, it stands to reason we'd want to do that for the subs.
It's a good consideration during budget time to see how much that would cost, and I would love to see the cost estimate of that.
January?
In
Or would
January.
you like
In our, budget study session,
Okay.
like, that is a question, how much that would cost.
And then, the last thing, as far as in recruitment, has there been any outreach to CSU, Sacramento, and UC Davis as far as at their career and internship centers? as
We
far as
attend
students?
the job fairs that they have. I haven't, in all honesty, I haven't reached out to them since our last board meeting, but I will certainly make that attempt, especially now that we have the flyer and a scheduled job fair. I will put that out there. In fact, working with Yorgos, he's going to be putting that on our social media as well. So that'll be advertised soon. And we will make sure that the universities and the local communities receive that. Because there's so many, not so much students, but we may have several, housewives or people that are at home and want to stay at home and want to work a couple days a week that possess their bachelor's, and we can point them on getting their CBEST and so forth. So yeah, I will do that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great way to be able to get people, especially with Davis being on the quarter systems, kids graduate every quarter, that may be looking to stay in the area because they have a lease signed for the year or something like that, and, you know, if I can go out and pay $80 and, you know, take my C-vest and be able to sub.
Yeah.
It seems like you would be a good recruiter.
I know.
Yeah, you know what?
I'm hearing it.
I have a job.
I got it.
Especially as a UC Davis alum.
No one
may
has
have
ever.
been in the Hall of Fame.
No one has ever asked for my assistance.
Oh, I see. But
I'm
it
receiving
sounds
it
like you
with
possibly
open
may
arms. Thank
be
you.
open to such a request.
No one has ever asked for my assistance.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions? All right, we need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion with the differential pay remaining the same for all of our employees through the end of this year.
Second.
Okay, is that, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
You have your
Thank you.
raise.
Thank you.
Okay.
When would this go into effect, by the way? Just out of curiosity. Sorry.
We've just voted on it.
I know, I'm just
But
curious.
go ahead, yeah, when would it go in?
Because there are subs, we can have it effective tomorrow.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to board governance, action item, resolution number 1920-04, recognition of the Native American Heritage Month in November of 2019. It says 2020, but we can adopt the 2020 this year too if we want to. It should be 2019. Do I have a volunteer to read?
I can't open it.
If not, I will read. So Washington Unified School District Resolution Number 1920-4, recognition of the National Native American Heritage Month. People of Native American heritage have played a central role in the history of the United States. And whereas the United States has paused to recognize the contributions of these citizens throughout the course of our history, and whereas President George W. Bush in 2002 proclaimed November to be National American Indian Heritage Month, and whereas we acknowledge these Americans for their contributions to the government, industry, commerce, agriculture, science, literature, and the arts, and whereas Section 51204.5 of the California Education Code states that instruction in social sciences shall include the early history of California and a study of the role and contributions of both men and women, Native Americans, African Americans, Mexican Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, European Americans, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Americans, persons with disabilities, and members of other ethnic and cultural groups to the economic, political, and social development of California and the United States of America, with particular emphasis on portraying the role of these groups in contemporary society. Therefore, be it resolved that the Washington Unified School District Board of Education recognizes November 2019 as Native American Heritage Month, and that all educational sites be encouraged to recognize the contributions of Native Americans through our curriculum and activities at the school. And that actually, so passed and adopted by the Washington Unified School District Board of Education on this 24th day of October 2019. This is a roll call vote because it's a resolution, yes? Trustee Kirby Gonzalez.
Aye.
Clerk Jackson.
Aye.
I vote aye. Vice President Pizzotti.
Aye. Trustee Okla.
Okay, you have enough votes for it to pass, and we will wait for the records to add on. So we'll leave the call open.
Leave it on call. Here it is.
We have a roll call vote. Trustee Alcala, do you vote aye on the resolution?
There you go.
Aye, unanimous vote. Okay, we are moving on to board comments. Trustee Kirby Gonzalez?
Sure, thank you. Okay, I want to thank all of my board colleagues for this afternoon, our special board meeting, and making time out of all of our busy schedules. And I look forward to tomorrow as well. And thank our facilitators who are here in the audience with us. I want to share that I went to Elkhorn's Principal Cafe after our last board meeting. And I got stopped in a parking lot by another parent, and I was late, and I thought that it was surely probably over. And they said, oh, no, they're still going in there. And I walked in. It was a big room of very engaged families, mostly our dual immersion families. And what was so special about that conversation was they were talking about the fact that they didn't think enough people were in the room. And how can we get other voices in this room, particularly the families who do not speak English? And so 2 of the parents volunteered and said, I'm bilingual, I can be the person to reach out, and I can meet with parents after these meetings. And it was really special because that came very organically from the school site. And I've never been at a school site where, usually they're like, oh, good, I have lots of room to say what I want to say, and here they were really trying to just crowd that room with people. It was really special. So I appreciated them there. And they advocated for their school in terms of pieces like making sure that we have literature that is in Spanish. And they're really doing a good job of being involved in asking a lot of questions, too, about how are we serving kids and what are we doing. And tonight we approved sending some of our teachers to professional development on dual immersion, and I know that they're very grateful for that. And then Stonegate had a lovely fall festival, and just a shout out to their PTO that works so hard to make those events just like at all of our school sites. And our police department now has a new bounce house, which is very exciting because the old one would collapse on people. And so a big thank you to them. And they came out and donated their bounce house and have said that they are happy to do that to any school that has an event. So if you are a school and you would like to have a bounce house, they are a fabulous partner in that regard. And then I want to thank all of our teachers for the work that they're doing on student-led conferences. And I want to thank our students for the work that they're doing on their student-led conferences because it's special to watch our kids really own that process. From our littlest learners, our first graders who are walking through stations, to our older students as well. And what I really appreciate that is happening here, and it's universal, is that this is happening before the report cards come. And so families are coming in, they're being led through the room by their children, and then the last station is meeting with the teacher and talking about strengths, talking about glows and grows, where can we do better? And they've been really positive. I'm watching families, come out of the classrooms just feeling a good connection to school. And I like that they're done before report cards. It's a lot of extra work for our staff to do it that way. It's a lot of extra work, so I commend them on that, but I think it's clearly very valuable. And then I want to thank Ruth for her Fill the Bag campaign in terms of getting the whole community together to help for middle school students to donate for toiletries and things to make them feel special. So thank you for your work on that. It's very special. And Westfield Elementary School is having their fall festival on the 30th. And for those that don't know, they've had their PTO is in transition. They have a few new PTO members that are stepping up to take that space. But with the transition means that they have some challenges in terms of many of our schools who is helping do that work while the parents are. And so I met with them, and a teacher said that the teachers were going to pay for the prizes for all the booths themselves. And for those that don't know, Westfield serves our highest percentage of students who are low socioeconomic, our students who are the highest number of students who are homeless, who are living often on West Capitol in the motels. And so the teachers did not want their kids to do without, and put out a plea to the community. And we just have such a special community because they have 15 different baskets of prizes now. The Bridgeway PTO voted to donate all of their prizes that they did not use, and other schools have reached out to say they do the same. And community members have now donated, I think, about $300 to help them get off the ground. And we have multiple people that are willing to run a booth. So if you would like to bake goods and donate it to their they call it musical chairs, not a cakewalk. You can do that for the 30th, or if you want to run a booth, you can reach out to them from 3 to 5. But it was really special to see the whole community. And when I went there, we had teachers and principals with teary eyes, just really grateful for how special our community is. And I'd like to also thank all the folks at River City and also at our 7th and 8th grade bands that brought all of our kids to River City to play their musical instruments, and they were right down there on the field with the band, the 7th and 8th graders. Not only did that pack a stadium with families and have kids out feeling really, really special on the field. So it made the folks down playing and cheerleading and in the band feel really special because they had a big audience. But it also got our families on the high school campus who might not otherwise be on the high school campus, who maybe are leaving and going to other districts in high school. And I think the more that we can positively get our students onto River City, which they are right now, hopefully, at the Parade of Mascots, maybe wrapping up to get to bed, but I think the better. It was very positive. So thank you. Oh, and last thing, thank you to President Wong. I'm sure she'll talk about it, the climate change, but she did speak on behalf of Washington Unified, and I want to thank you for that.
Trustee Alcala.
Thank you. I, along with trustees Kirby Gonzalez and Pizzotti, attended the Yolo County Office of Education's Leaders Series, and it was very, very informative. Wonderful things are happening in Yolo County. Each of the superintendents spoke, and our superintendent gave a wonderful presentation on great things that are happening here in our district. It's great to hear these presentations because I think, a lot of the superintendents share ideas. They get together very often and you talk about the successes that they have in their schools. So this is really so important in preparing our kids for the 21st century. And then, let's see, I'm going to make it really quick because I know other board members have good stuff to report. I'm going to the River City game tomorrow. My granddaughter's, at the high school, I've mentioned this many times, and I volunteered to actually chaperone at the dance, but she didn't want me to do that. So I guess I'll have to just satisfy myself with going to the game. And then I just wanted to touch on something you said, Sarah, and I think it is so important. We've sort of touched on this a few times about having parent outreach from people in their communities. A lot of times, you'll find this wonderful parent who's, especially in the communities of color, who is trusted within those communities. And I think if we start searching out those folks, this goes to you, Andy, also, these are the people that we need to tap and, perhaps even give them training. But they already have a skill that we very much need, which is that outreach that Sarah mentioned. And they have the trust within those communities. So maybe we can start, reaching out to them that way. And in turn, they get their kids more involved, as you said, and it starts at a much earlier age if we can get to them through these parent liaisons. And finally, I'm just going to wish everyone a safe and happy Halloween.
Clerk Jackson.
I had the pleasure last week of going to one of the flag football games that were being held in the district. And one of the things that really stood out to me was that the turnout of the kids participating in the flag football league in this district was phenomenal. I mean, the number of kids that I saw that were from the different schools that were actually out there playing in the league was impressive. But it got me thinking, and it just happens that one of the principals was there, and we started chatting a little bit, and I said, there's got to be a way that we are able to matriculate these kids from the programs that we have, the after-school programs that we have, for example, flag football. I said, why isn't it that these kids are matriculating over to the high school? Because at some point, somewhere, we're losing a lot of our kids. And I think the thing is that we need to understand that we're in a different age nowadays, and that kids have choices, and we can't just passively sit back and assume that just because we have a kid that's enrolled in our eighth grade class or whatever, regardless of what school that they may be at, that kid is automatically going to matriculate over to River City High School, because that's not happening, and we need to do more to recruit and maintain our own kids, because if we don't, we're going to continue to lose some of our best and brightest students that believe that things are better, or that there's better programs, better academic programs, better athletic programs at some other school in Sacramento or somewhere else because of the perception of whatever it may be of the schools that we have here in West Sacramento. And it's not limited to the high school. It also goes down to our middle schools and our K-8s. And it was one of the things that we talked about. And that we have to do more. We've got to do more. We've got to do more in terms of getting the message out to the community and help inviting the community out, getting people out to see the types of programs and the things that we have to offer here in West Sacramento. I've been beating this drum for a while now, and I will continue to beat this drum because I believe it's that important to make sure that the proper information is getting out. We've got to do a better job of controlling the narrative of what's taking place in this district. Letting people know that, you have great academic programs that are available to your child over at River City High School. There's no reason to send your child to Jesuit. There's no reason for you to send your child to St. Francis or to McClatchy, because the programs that we offer are at least as good, if not better. And so I would love to see us. We need to do more. I would love to see us get more actively involved in the active recruitment and maintain, so we can help that matriculation of our own kids into our own schools. Because there's no reason why we shouldn't be keeping our kids that we've worked hard to get them prepared to go to high school, and then they take that success, and that success is credited to another district or to another academic institution because we didn't do what we needed to do to make sure that they stayed here. So for me, I think it would be great if we develop some sort of a team that would consist of principals and other administration and district folks where we can develop some sort of a program or plan or whatever to try and help maintain that matriculation of our own kids. Because we can't. For me, that's something that we can't continue to do. Let's continue to lose kids, our kids, to other places because they're our kids. They need to stay home. And I think if we did more on our end to make them, again, feel appreciated and wanted and valued, they would stay. But again, like I said, the turnout that I saw at the flag football, just the number of kids on those different teams was pretty doggone impressive. And I know it's just not limited to that. But again, it's just some of the things that I think there's just more that we should do, more that we can do. Either as a board to control that narrative, to control that message, to get people to stay home and not thinking that the grass is greener someplace else. But with that, again, my thanks to my daughter. We had our daughter's parent-teacher conference the other day, and again, the work that we saw them being produced in their classroom, the way they were able to walk my wife and I around and show us the things that they were learning and to show us the things that what's taking place in their classrooms it was impressive. If you haven't had a chance, you don't have a chance to see one of the student-led conferences, it's something to see. Especially when you can see have an 8-year-old that can walk you around the classroom to the different stations that the teacher has set up and shows you and demonstrate to you exactly what's taking place in their classroom on a daily basis. So like I said before, it's what you see on the computer is not indicative of the learning that's taking place in our schools, because our teachers are doing a great job, but we just need to do a better job of making sure that everyone else knows that.
Vice President Pizzotti?
Yeah. So I too went to the football game with Trustee Kirby Gonzalez and saw the middle school bands play with our River City High School band, and it was quite impressive. You could see how much joy the kids got playing with the band, and it was wonderful seeing, like Trustee Kirby Gonzalez said, all the parents fill the stands when they wouldn't normally necessarily be there to watch a high school game. But what really caught me, what I thought was kind of cool, at the very end of the game, when the game was, coming to an end, the River City Band marched out of the stadium, and the kids, the middle school kids, got to march out with them. And you could see just the look of pride on their faces that they got to do that. I thought that was really touching to me. And it kind of, you had the River City Band in uniform, going to the drum line and marching out in synchronicity. And then you had the middle school kids that kind of reminded me of the Stanford marching band. They were kind of out there doing their own thing. But they were still having
Not the Cal
great...
marching band.
They're better than Cal, come on. So anyway, I thought that was a great sight. And by the way, River City High School beat the pants off of McClatchy, which was always good. So the next thing was I wanted to touch on was something that was brought to the board a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it was a couple weeks ago, maybe been a month ago, but and I wanted to pay attention to it, was that the sound system at the stadium was not, I think, in my opinion, was not up to what it should be. It was very hard to understand and clearly hear the names that were being announced. The music that was played for the cheerleaders, I felt, really bad for them, because it was, when they would go out there and perform their dance, it was really hard to understand, where all the beats were, where all the synchronicity was supposed to be coming from. So I did kind of feel bad for them, having to go through that. And if you weren't sitting right under a speaker, it was incredibly hard to hear. So I will attest to that. Next, I went to the, Sunday, I wasn't sure. West Sac Kids Give Back at Lanisa's Cafe. And there was a pretty good-sized turnout for that. And there's going to be another one coming up in November. So if you didn't get a chance to participate, definitely go do that. My daughter absolutely loved that. And, you brought up the parent-teacher conferences, the student-led parent-teacher conferences. I think that they're great, and I think they're excellent. The only one comment that I would have about them is, for someone like my daughter, it's incredibly difficult, because you're on a truncated timetable, to have them lead you through a conference when at the end of the day, and my daughter has ADHD, she's kind of pulling it all together, by chewing gum. She's all over the place. So I'm thinking now, what about other kids? If mine was all over the place, what about other kids who are in similar fashion, who really have troubles focusing throughout the day? And now she's, or any other kid, is trying to leave you through a conference that's actually timed, right? You only got so many, you got so many minutes to get through all these stations before the next family gets in. So, I don't think there's any way to get around that. I think they're doing the best they can, but it's just something to contemplate. And then, yes, Trustee Alcala and Kirby Gonzalez and I went to the Yolo County Office of Education Leader Series. And I just want to say how proud I am of Superintendent Luna. She always gives a riveting report on how we're doing, so much to the extent that they actually make her go last. She basically puts everybody else to shame that nobody else wants to go after her. So I would say that's something that's very interesting. Yeah, literally cried. She actually made one person there cry with such a moving presentation on how well we do in this district. So I just want to say how proud I am of her. Of course, I'm proud of all of our staff here in administration. But she is truly a a great champion and spokesperson for our district and a leader. So that, I'm good.
Great. I want to first thank our guests here today, Deborah and Nicole, who helped us, helped facilitate a beginning of a conversation and our commitment to equity and access across the district, because that's been resonating with me throughout this hearing, or this board meeting. Not every school has student-led conferences, right? So that's the three board members who have student-led conferences are at one school. And so I would love to see that expanded to other school districts, or school sites, but that doesn't happen on every single campus. And I didn't experience that, so I would have loved to actually experience that. So I think that when we look at how we administer things, what schools do in certain areas may not happen at other areas, and if it's good for all students, maybe we should actually look at that. So that actually was a reminder of like, oh, you guys really, I would have probably enjoyed something like that, but it just doesn't happen. No. With that said, I do love the feedback from the teachers of my daughters. They are loving, they are caring, they do not focus on the test scores. I love that they start with what does your student, what does your student think of class? So I love the fact that they are, the first questions and comments around that's like, well, you tell me what does, Genevieve and Kennedy, like how are they experiencing this? And then they go into the conference. So I love their heart, right? Even though it is not the student-led kind of conference. So the other thing was also top of mind is youth voice. Yesterday I had the opportunity to go to YED Talk, which is the YOLO County Department of Education, like a TED Talk, but a YED Talk. And they were talking about authentic youth engagement, not just giving them a survey, but really bringing them to the table and listening to them and actually implementing their suggestions. And this, you had all of the leaders in Yolo County, or majority of the leaders, Councilmember Sandine was there, Bernadette Austin was there, Don Saylor, everybody from, Mayor from Woodland was there, so everybody was there. And these young people are saying, we keep on telling, but you never listen. You think we fail. You think you give us a score, but we give you recommendations, but you never implement them. Right? And so it was just and there was just silence in the room. All the people who are, they've been in elected office longer than I have, they're county, city mayors, whatever. And it was like dead silence. They were like, wow, like how do you, and very articulate young people, right? Just calling us all out on our listen, you are trying to create a world for us, but you actually aren't listening or actually even allowing us to actually make a decision. You give us a survey, you maybe do a focus group, but then you do that complete opposite. So that was really top of mind for me, right? So that was really a good experience. And I came late just because I had my student-teacher conference. But they were amazing young people, right? They were just amazing young people. And the courage it took for them to actually speak to us in that room of those powerful, influential people. The other thing that Trustee Kirby-Gonzalez mentioned was that I was also able to participate in the mayors, being that Mayor Steinberg and Mayor Cambalden's climate change summit, the youth summit that was hosted at River City High School, and half the room was River City and half the room was Natomas and Sacramento base. And that was, primarily youth focused too. We took a picture with a young woman, Priya, who actually helped organize the March on the Capitol. And so it was just, our leaders of today, our children are just amazing in terms of the things they think about, in terms of climate change, in terms of things that we can do with transportation. I got to brag about our 4 electric buses, and they said, what do you mean you have electric buses? 0 emissions. So having the young people actually be engaged in 0 emissions standards by 2045 was powerful, because I think I shared this there and I'll share this here, is that on back to school night, my daughter, who was in 5th grade, who at the time was 10, you're like, what, your most favorite thing about school or the world, mommy, blah, 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 I love mommy. What's your greatest fear, right? Like people think it's the boogeyman or something else, or gun violence or whatever. She said, mommy, well, she wrote it, is climate change. She's 10. She's 10. And she's looking at the decisions that the adults are making today that we are not really considering what's going to happen to her or her children. And she's 10. And I'm not a big climate change person, by the way. I mean, I don't know where she gets this. Like, at 10, I don't know what I was doing. I think I was just playing with my dolls or something. But the fact that the young people are realizing and becoming more aware of what we're doing to them and not with them is pretty, both, I want to be accountable to that. In my time here. So that was pretty powerful. And I think, last but not least, I also was able to participate in an Assembly Committee oversight hearing on an additional CSU requirement for eligibility. And it was just really, well, I won't get into it, but we were essentially, West Sacramento was the NCAP of the oversight hearing. Mayor Cabaldon started out with the history of eligibility and admissions, and I got to end as the K-12 response. I was all of K-12, right? And that was a lot of pressure, but in terms of the incongruence of, I mentioned the young people, saying we're actually passing policies that affect their lives, we actually aren't listening or hearing them. And I felt that way in this higher ed hearing, when the higher ed folks are actually creating all of these standards, wanting to add an additional year of quantitative reasoning or math. And I'm going, we barely got the dashboard up with college and career ready, right? We're being held accountable publicly, but y'all are creating another system that we're going to have to react to, that we're going to have to hire teachers for, that they're not trained right now. Right, so it's that kind of we've historically worked in silos, and I think my goal, my hope is that in the future that we will all work better together between pre-K-12 and higher ed. I don't know if that's true or not, but the fact that the CSU system, all of higher ed, is actually working into a formula that was created in the 60s, that only 12% get to go to UC, 33% get to go to CSU, and good luck with everybody else. But our goals for college and career are supposed to be 100%. How does that actually work out? Right? If we get to our 100% goal of making everybody college ready, but the university is saying, we're actually only going to accept 33%. What are we doing for our children and our students? So I know that's a side note, but I've been thinking a lot about, how we historically don't work together, and I'd like to kind of be part of that change. That's all for me. So we're going to move on to, there's no superintendent update. Future board agenda items, S1, Board Policy Subcommittee meeting, November 7th, 2019. Clerk Jackson and I will be part of this hearing, and thank you for your referral, Trustee Kirby Gonzalez, to the students. I think are going to be able to meet next Tuesday. We'll be meeting with some students about their perspectives on dress code and a number of other things. We're going to review the after-school program priority for ACEs, cell phone use, dress code, and uniform. S2 is review of programs for students with special needs. S3, review of MTSS, PBIS programs. S4, after-school care update. S5, enrichment and athletic program review. S6, board budget study session now in December. S7, curriculum and technology update. Anything else for the good of the order? We could have, okay, great. So if not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.